We're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast on a Thursday, and welcome to it here. Rumble.com/AMRadPod is where you get us Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 10:30 Eastern Time. And if you want to give us a thumbs up and a follow on the channel here on Rumble, we really appreciate it. Give a subscription over to the iTunes, Spotify, iHeart if you have not already, even if you watch us here on Rumble. Subscribe over there on the audio format so we can continue to trick the algorithm into radicalizing more Americans. And as always, the new platforms where we are is at X America News on X. And we have the YouTube channel standing up. And I swear, guys, I'm trying to get briefed up on the Instagram. That's what all the kids are doing. They're telling me with all the hashtags. It's a learning process. I am a Luddite at heart, but I'll do my best to get us up there. Trying to get to as many people as we can, radicalizing as many Americans as possible, which we endeavor to do Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Today is no exception. Today, we're going to introduce a term that might be unfamiliar to you, a kakistocracy, if you can keep it. A kakistocracy is basically government by the worst people, and I've got a little video to brief you up on it. But examples of that we're seeing today all across the fruited plain at local, state, federal levels. So we've got some public schools out in California that are grading for equity, not knowledge. We're giving welfare out to dead people. Government radio is perverting free speech laws. There are climate pagans who are filing lawsuits against the federal government because of, naturally, the sun monster. The FBI targeting Catholics. It was worse than it was originally advertised to us. Some exposés there. And also the FBI hiding information regarding Crossfire Hurricane, Russiagate, revelations from former college professor of yours truly, Margot Cleveland, over at the Federalist. And as always, we're promoting the worst people. A whole bunch to get to today, guys. Excited to get to it all. And I alluded to this video because why not? Why should you all rely on @RealSteveFriend when the YouTube can suffice? We'll give us a play to introduce the term a kakistocracy.
Ever looked around and wondered if your government is run by the least qualified or the most unscrupulous individuals? You might be dealing with a kakistocracy. Now, let's break this down. The term kakistocracy comes from the Greek words kakistos, meaning worst, and kratos, meaning rule. It was coined in the 17th century, but feels more relevant today than ever. Imagine a system where the worst people are in charge, making decisions that affect millions. Scary, right? So how do you spot a kakistocracy? First, look for leaders who lack qualifications. They might have zero experience or knowledge in governance, but somehow find themselves in power. Next, observe their actions. Are they prioritizing their interests over the nation's? Are corruption and incompetence rampant? Take a moment and think about your own country's leadership. Do they fit this description? In some places, it's glaringly obvious. Leaders who are more interested in lining their pockets than serving the people. Policies that seem designed to fail, benefiting only a select few. But it's not just about pointing fingers. Recognizing a kakistocracy is the first step in demanding better governance.
Well, that sounds familiar, but it could just be me. I'll leave it up to my cohort, my co-host, and my friend Garrett O'Boyle, who's with us today at GOB Actual. What you think, my friend?
Seems like we're living in one of those things, Steve. A kakistocracy. I never
If you
heard
can
that
keep
term.
it.
Yes, indeed, and I think that we can keep it. It will remain henceforth.
Well, I've got a lot of examples to get to, I said, at all different varying levels. We're kind of going to have like a smorgasbord, I guess, within the kakistocracy. But since we have that giant umbrella headline, I feel pretty confident that I've aggregated a show that is somewhat coherent. I am not as competent as other podcast hosts out there. This is more really like the American Kakistocracy Radicals program sometimes, especially on Saturdays. But we'll do our best today. And let's start out where things always seem to start in this country. As goes California, goes the nation. The Voice of San Francisco reports a grading for equity coming to San Francisco high schools this fall. Without seeking approval of the San Francisco Board of Education, The superintendent of schools, Maria Sue, plans to unveil a new grading for equity plan that will go into effect this fall for 14 high schools and cover over 10,000 students. So she didn't even go by the elected officials, who I'm sure are dyed-in-the-wool communists. They weren't quite communist enough for the superintendent, who was actually hired by the school boards, if there's any sort of consistency from what I've seen in my experience. So she just went rogue. This plan is called Grading for Equity. It eliminates homework or weekly tests from being counted in the student's final grade. All that matters is how the student scores on a final exam, which can be taken multiple times. Students can be late turning in an assignment, showing up to class, or not showing up at all without it affecting their grade. Currently, a student needs 90% for an A and at least 61% for a D. But under the new grading for the equity system touted by the San Francisco Unified School District, a student with a score as low as 80 gets an A, and as low as 21% passes with a D. I mean, you weeping for the future here? Are we just going to continue to have people matriculate through the school system so that they can take over and be the super incompetent worst people on earth to run things?
I think when I was in school, a 90 was a B, somewhere in the B range.
It was like 92 got you to the A minus.
Yeah. So already I was like, well, okay, the scale's slipping a little bit. They're letting them do the test more than once, which essentially is the teacher grading it on a curve, because just retry, maybe you'll get a little bit better this time. But an 80% is an A now? Steve, where do we go from here?
I mean, D for diploma, which means that you need to get 1 out of 5 of the answers right. And theoretically, if you're taking the test over and over again, like it's training for a government job on a PowerPoint slide that you just click through and you got to get an 80, and then you take the test and they give you the answers and you got a 60, and you're like, let me retake it again.
One more
And
time.
you don't get 100 the next time around. I think it leads to the type of people like the superintendent in San Francisco taking the reins and saying, I'm just going to keep people as dumb as possible so they don't raise an objection to the fact that I'm stepping outside the bounds and duties, responsibilities, and maybe even the guardrails that are actually part of my job description, where I'm supposed to get the approval of the duly elected school board before I just make every kid within the district as retarded as possible. Worst
Well,
people in charge.
they are. And going back to that Kakistocracy video, whose interest is this? The teacher, because I'm sure their annual review factors in the grades that their kids get. It certainly isn't in the best interest of the kids, which is what it is supposed to be in. But hey, just keep plugging along, I guess.
And as an aside, I went kind of down to the rabbit hole of a Kakistocracy. I'm like, it's probably really subjective. Caligula is generally considered that from the Roman Empire, but the worst one that I guess the overall consensus is Mugabe, the Zimbabwe dictator,
Mm,
who drove inflation up to 79.6 billion%.
whoa.
Joe Biden looks like George Washington compared to Mugabe. All right. All right. Along education lines, let's talk about the federal aspect of that, and that is the Department of Homeland Security. And the reporting that I saw was from Newsweek, which is a garbage website, and I'm not going to pull it up, and I don't like the pop-ups, so I'm just going to look off screen here and talk about how thousands of dead people got student aid. The Trump administration revealed to us, and there's a couple of things in here that caught my attention, other than just the typical Republican waste, fraud, and abuse talking points, which is honestly on its face pretty disturbing. But Department of Education found that over the previous 3 years, more than $30 million in federal student aid was paid out to thousands of recipients who were already dead. 30 million misallocated to deceased recipients was part of a larger total, which was nearly 90 million. So you think 90 would be in the headlines. So maybe we have the worst people in media too. The 90 million was distributed to ineligible recipients during the same period. So dead people, and then maybe people who weren't going to school or whatever, maybe illegal aliens. $90 million came out of the coffers of the Department of Education, which is paid for by us. And we talked about their budget is over $200 billion to do things that don't involve education. To address the issue, though, because the adults are back in charge, we're based now. To address the issue, Department of Ed is reported that it's strengthening its real-time data sharing agreement. Maybe they're using Palantir with the Social Security Administration. The department also announced the resumption, and here's what caught my attention. Right now, has been suspended since COVID. They're now resuming automated post-screening for student aid records. So never let a crisis go to waste. We have coronavirus lockdowns and shutdowns, which necessitate us not monitoring if student aid is going to dead people. Just shut it off. It'll be fine. Or maybe they're, as that video alluded to, making policies that don't just make sense, but are objectively doing the opposite of what we want them to do. And to finish it up, despite the large number, experts say the level of fraud is still relatively low. I mean, 90 million. We're quibbling over pennies.
Dude, it just goes to show every facet of government is broken. Can you think of one where it's like 90% of the time they're doing it what they're supposed to do? Is even your local DPW doing that? You know, fixing the roads, plowing the snow, whatever. Maybe, but I've got a feeling, having worked in both city and federal government, that that's just not the case. And any piece of fraud, which I don't care if you're sending dead people. Well, this is my question then. Okay, so you're going to try to minimize the fraud that you're engaged in. Where's that money going? Who's getting it? If it's not, because the dead people aren't spending it. And it also makes me think of the Sixth Sense movie. I see dead people.
$90 million is going to the wrong places. But how about the dismissiveness of it? $90 million. If it fell to you or me or anyone in the audience, if it just landed in your bank account, we're talking about generational wealth.
Yep.
Which would mean that you, your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids, if they were, I don't know, a modicum of responsible, and we don't have Mugabe-like inflation, would never have to do anything for the rest of their lives.
Yep.
I mean, you could just live off the interest in an interest-bearing bank account and be in the smallest 1% of the 1% of Americans. And the worst people are the government that allowed this, initiated happening. They knew it was going to happen when they stopped monitoring for dead people getting student aid.
Right.
And then a reporting mechanism that says, there's no there, guys. It's only $90 million. When's
And
the last time you saw a Powerball sign? 90 million is not nothing.
Right. Maybe I should buy one of those tickets. But also, what does COVID have to do with it? Why does okay? So we've got the Wuhan flu, and now just stop monitoring if dead people are getting this money. Who made that decision? And then who are all the people who went along with it, and why? Why did no one say, why would we stop monitoring for that? That seems like a simple thing that we can continue to do even through COVID.
And the headline number was 30 million that went to the dead people, but the overall was 90, and they didn't want to tell you what it's from, which means it went to illegal aliens, which will be the subject of the next Kakistocracy item on our rundown here, where an individual working for an elected official got arrested. That's good. I'm not going to bang the cops for this one. Let's give the arrest a play, and then we can find out exactly what went on here.
No, she did not. That is not what happened.
That is not what happened.
I love the tears.
Okay?
Hold on a second. Give me your contact information right now.
No, I'm going to give you something to speak to you.
Hey.
That's what I'm
I'll
going to
speak to
do.
you after. We got you.
No.
We got you.
You're
okay.
I don't have to.
You're okay. You're okay. You're going to be okay.
It's going to be okay as I record it.
We have the right to check. I'm giving you. I'm not resisting. Stop resisting.
She's resisting out in the hallway. Look, some knowledge you pick up along the way. They drill that into your head. If there's anything and you're gonna have to go hands on, you scream stop resisting, so anybody with an earshot knows that you're not just engaging in police brutality, like the FBI is apparently arguing for on social media with the hardened knuckle gloves on the individual photograph there.
Even though his radio's disconnected. This is great. I like this for all sorts of reasons. One, record the police. By all means, I know a lot of cops take umbrage with that. I never did. Whenever someone's like, I'm recording you, right? I point back to my patrol car or whatever and say, yeah, I'm recording too, and pretty sure my old PD has body cams now. I guess I don't know for certain, but that's the where where departments are headed. But by all means, exercise your right. If you are having an interaction with the police, record it. And then the tears. I mean, Steve, how many people have you put into handcuffs who then the waterworks started coming because, as the kids like to say, FAFO. That's what she did. She effed around and she found out. So okay, and it just maybe because of the background we have, I just all these memories come flooding back. Like, oh yeah, the and typically it is with women, which is more rare to arrest a woman than a man, in my experience. But typically, they're the ones who will start crying to try to get out of this situation. But hey, if you got probable cause for the arrest, you're going. And apparently they had that here. And then on top of it, the other woman where the cop who's like, I'm going to come in there and talk to you. Do you have a warrant? Do you have a warrant? I don't need a warrant to come into your office. It's a government office. I'm going to
Well,
come in
we're
there.
seeing the snippets of the arrest. There
Yeah.
actually was more information about this because this was going on at Jerry Nadler's district office in New
Oh,
York.
Jerry Nadler. We need handcuffs on him.
Yeah, well, or his aide or his attorney, Kelsey, right, who really
Yeah.
was a peach to deal with when we were deposed by her with her psychopath eyes. So the reporting here from The Gothamist, which I do enjoy the name of
I
that
do. Yes. I like
platform, even
that
though
name.
it's a lefty rag. The Department of Homeland Security cops handcuffed one of Representative Nadler's aides in a chaotic day at the New York Federal Building. The DHS officers entered Nadler's district office and accused staff members of harboring rioters because the demonstrations were becoming violent. Homeland Security later said in a statement that one individual, the woman seen being handcuffed, blocked police from performing a security check they intended to do based on information that there were protesters in the lawmaker's office. So they were harboring the lawbreakers, and they said, "No, you can't do that because now you're an accomplice." Now, the Gothamist describes the people who were engaged in protest or rioting, more likely. They call them advocates. The advocates said that they were outside an immigration courtroom where plainclothes ICE officers were questioning people as they were leaving their court appearances. The advocates said they were advising the immigrants, the illegal aliens, of their rights. They have none. The officers, in turn, threatened the advocates with arrest for loitering, which I don't know, borders on maybe being a little too aggressive in policing. But again, if you're doing a crowd dispersal, you might have to very strictly interpret the letter of the law in order to avoid something from going from being a loud and boisterous protest to something that's more riotous. The staff member, and I think it's worth noting, was not arrested nor charged with any crime, but she did cry quite a bit, which was entertaining to me.
Okay, well, I'm disappointed again now because if she was interfering
Right?
as they claim, then she should have been arrested and charged. So is this one of these where I put you in handcuffs, I take you away, and then my sergeant or lieutenant hears from Jerry Nadler, who he called the chief because they're friends, and then it trickled down and they said, yeah, you need to unarrest that person. That's what it sounds like.
And then those officers just followed orders on that, which
Hmm.
really kind of puts their credibility on the line because you put handcuffs on someone,
Yeah,
you wrongfully arrested them because
right.
you might not officially charge someone, but if you are hindering their movement, they are under arrest,
Hmm.
which is why a traffic stop is technically an arrest, which is why, just for people's knowledge, when the officer hands you your ticket, I don't care what the violation was for. If you want to fight that in court, you should. But when they say sign your ticket, that is not admission of guilt. That's you basically being arrested and released on your own recognizance. And if you say, no, I'm not going to sign that, they're kind of duty bound to put you in the lockup so they can verify your identity. Just in your best interest and just for time management, just sign the ticket and then go tell the judge what
Yeah,
happened.
I don't know. I'd imagine. Well, I guess I don't know because if these are federal police, do they have a union? I'm not sure how all that would work for them, but uh, this is a big problem for you, the individual cop, now because, as you said, you got the handcuffs on. I'm hauling you out of your office. A reasonable person would say, yeah, that person's under arrest. So now you end up releasing her later. Now you open yourself up for all sorts of wrongful, false arrest lawsuit, some other type of civil rights related lawsuit. And would you think for even a moment that Jerry Nadler wouldn't pursue something like that?
Oh,
Just to get the headline and say false arrest. I had a staffer who was falsely arrested for protecting people, being an advocate for people who are in our country. And how dare Donald Trump's DHS police come in my office and make this arrest, and then they let her go. And so now we're going to go after them for false arrest. I mean,
they're just a
that's
lowly
simple.
GS8 government worker, right? They're the plebeian swine, the proletariat. We are the bourgeois. I work for Jerry Nadler. My name is Kristen Kelsey. I've got psychopath eyes. You bet I'm going to go after you to make sure that my honor is protected and I can further myself in my career, even though, my husband is making all the money and I have a job which essentially I donated more to the Democrats than I actually get paid. That's sort of a little bit of a money laundering scheme, if you ask me. But now we're getting aside. Well, or we aren't really. That's Kakistocracy, best summed up. But let's get to the topics I've got on my rundown here, because the White House is now sending some of the Doge cuts up to the hill, Garrett. Finally, good governance. A
Yay.
Kakistocracy, we can't keep it because we're about the Doge now. So let's dig into what the details are about the Department of Government Efficiency and how much we're going to rein in spending to get this ship sailing straight again. The $9.4 billion package, known as a rescission on Capitol Hill, would claw back previously appropriated government funding. Basically, the House and Congress, the House has the power of the purse. They pass a budget. And the argument from the executive branch is, hey, you allocated $100 billion to achieve this mission. I came in under budget. I came in at 90 billion. I shouldn't be obligated to just waste 10 billion. We're supposed to be good stewards of the taxpayer. So I need to do this rescission. Now they're kind of using that mechanism to go after particular elements of that Doge has identified. They're saying, look, that's wasteful spending. We don't need to do that anymore. We've identified $9.4 billion, which represents 0.1% of the budget. So hardly fiscally responsible, but it's just not surprising anyone. This is NPR, PBS, USAID. The initial request falls a little bit short of the initial goal that Elon Musk set, which was $1 trillion.
Just a little bit short, Steve. This is one of those things to me where they say, "Oh, 9.4 billion. That's a
I
lot
mean,
of
we were
money."
just saying 90
90,
million is a
right,
lot.
right. And 90 million pales in comparison to the big billion that we're talking about here. But overall, this is scant a drop in the bucket to government spending. The deficit is still going to go up in a matter of trillions, by the way. So is this a win? I don't count this a win. For those of you who are really tuned in on X and things like that, you've probably seen some of Elon Musk's recent tweets where he's essentially coming out of government. His time at Doge is done, and now he's utilizing his First Amendment rights and saying, hey, this actually isn't what I was hoping it would be. This isn't what I thought it would be. The big, beautiful bill is actually not a good thing. And then you got people like Mike Johnson and others coming out and saying, oh, well, we're just in a disagreement about what Mr. Musk has to say. We're grateful for all the work and time he has spent to help us. But we are actually sending the Doge cuts through. It's
Mike
Kakistocracy.
Johnson spearheaded giving up the biggest sugar daddy the Republican Party has ever had in its history. And he's actually quoted here in the CNN article. It says, Speaker Mike Johnson said that the House is, quote, eager and ready to act on Doge's findings so we can deliver even more cuts to big government than President Trump wants and the American people demand.
Dude, you can't hate these people enough.
No.
He's just spewing falsities at you because he thinks it sounds good. He thinks you're going to fall for it. And most people will, because most people don't pay attention to what their Kakistocracy is doing.
Mhm. I want to dig more into the NPR element of this in a second, but let's break away because you're getting kind of like fired up here, Garrett. I want you
I'm
to calm me
pretty
down
now.
with our sponsor of the day, and that's the True Earth Pharmacy. trueearth.co. Our promo code there is AMRAD25, AMRAD25. That gets you 10% off site-wide, including all the fertilizer products, especially the squid extract, and the personal supplements, which are included in the pharmacy spelled with an F. And I said, Garrett's getting fired up. Maybe he needs to look at some of the CBD options that they got there. At the very least, maybe get turmeric so that you won't be so like curmudgeonly and angry at the inflammation. I've been taking it, taking the turmeric now over a year. It works. I am not what you would identify or characterize as somebody who responds to any sort of supplements. I've never taken the nitrous or the NO Explode
The
or the
Jack
Syntha
3D.
6. Yeah. And felt like that made a difference. I look like Hellboy right now in my workout, but the turmeric definitely makes it so that I don't hobble down my stairs in the morning. In the eventuality that the SWAT team comes at 6 o'clock in the morning, they won't have to breach. I'll just meet them there. All right. And so back to NPR. And I have a piece here from the Daily Signal, which is part of the rescissions package. And it's an easy win. It's an easy win. I cannot get over the fact that they can't make these things happen other than the fact that we have a Kakistocracy. So good policy is not something. So Daily Signal's reported, and there was a link there to this statement that came from NPR itself. NPR and Catherine Marr, I guess Bill Maher spells it that way. So Catherine Marr, she's the CEO of NPR, and she issued a statement in regards to these cuts and the fact that they are now bringing a lawsuit against the Trump administration on First Amendment grounds. It basically spells out how Colorado Public Radio, Aspen Public Radio, and KSUT, they have joined National Public Radio, NPR, as litigants in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. These Colorado locations are going to Washington, D.C. to sue, to challenge Donald Trump's executive order aimed at cutting funding. NPR says the order is, quote, textbook retaliation and viewpoint-based discrimination in violation of the First Amendment. The order's objectives could not be clearer. The order aims to punish NPR for the content of news and other programming the president dislikes and chill the free exercise of the First Amendment rights by NPR and individual public radio stations across the country. They are entitled to your money, taxpayer money. Damn it, Garrett. Because of the First Amendment. It says that in the invisible ink on the back of the Declaration of Independence, that radio can get taxpayer money to say whatever the heck they want, right?
Doesn't take an ACLU attorney from the 90s to sort this one out, Steve. Because on its face, this is perhaps my most despised piece of a Kakistocracy, is where, well, in this way, it's technically private citizens, but they're getting government funding so they're going to sue the government for money that they are not entitled to. Now, over the last 5 years, most of the lawfare was coming from the government directly. In this case, it's going to cost more taxpayer dollars to fight this lawsuit because these people think that they have an innate First Amendment right to your taxpayer dollars. And lawyers are like, okay, yeah, I'll do that lawsuit. And there's perhaps a big chance that these people will win, because do judges in Washington, D.C., or even all across the nation, do they care anymore about true judicious actions that they will take when they look at a case? Or will they say, this is kind of a novel case, but it's going to hurt Donald Trump, so we'll rule in your favor? That's kind of how I lean. That doesn't matter what judge, gets this lawsuit. They're probably going to be more prone to ruling in favor of these people who just want your money, and they aren't entitled to it, plain and simple.
And this is a quote unquote news organization that's interested in the truth, right? And they limited what they were talking about, the Hunter Biden laptop. They said, we're not going to report on that because that's not true. It's not news. And Catherine Marr, I've seen her face before. I know that name. And I was able to find a nice video that best sums up. You got to consider the content of the character. Consider the source. Catherine Marr, CEO of National Public Radio.
I think our reverence for the truth might have become a bit of a distraction. that is preventing us from finding consensus and getting important things done.
The truth is getting in the way, Garrett, of getting things done. They don't have to be factual or accurate. Give us your gosh darn government money.
Oh, Steve. Is that a TED Talk that
Yes.
she was doing? So she's decrying the truth. If we're going to have a consensus on anything, the truth has to be the cornerstone of that consensus. So if you want to disagree with the truth, fine, but we're not going to have a consensus then. And we're not going to sacrifice the truth at your false god altar of government, because the truth actually does matter. It's not something to be trifled with. It's not something that gets in the way. It's the pinnacle of what we should be searching for.
Counterpoint. I believe your reverence for the truth is getting in the way, Garrett.
I think our reverence for the truth might have become a bit of a distraction.
A
That is
distraction.
preventing us from finding consensus and getting important things done.
That
What
is a vile communist right there.
what can be more revered than the truth? What can you have more reverence for than the truth? But it's a distraction that's getting in the way of our consensus.
The way, the truth, and finish it.
Life, no one comes to the Father but through me.
All right,
End
that's
quote,
a
Jesus Christ.
mid-episode biblical worldview that I just couldn't help but drop on Garrett. And we're alluding to different court cases that are coming through and how that there might be some energetic judges that say, look, we can't let the truth get in the way of getting important things done, like giving the double middle bird to the president because he's orange and mean and literally Hitler. How about 22 young Americans who are suing the Trump administration over Trump's executive orders that they say are going to promote climate change? I pulled up the court document. And it's kind of boring to look at, but just briefly throw it up there. And it was important because it led me down a little bit of a rabbit hole. But pull it back down and say, what is this lawsuit about? It's effectively, there's multiple executive orders that say that we have a national emergency, and you know where we stand on national emergencies, clearly abused, but the national emergency on energy. We need to get that black gold, baby. So drill, baby, drill. The suit alleges that the president's executive orders violate these 22 young people's Fifth Amendment rights to life and liberty by deliberately worsening climate pollution that threatens their health and future. Stick with me, Garrett. Trump's fossil fuels orders are a death sentence for my generation, plaintiff Eva Lighthouser said. I'm not suing because I want to. No, I'm suing because I have to. And your reference
Yes.
for the truth is a distraction. My health, my future, and my right to speak the truth are all on the line. He's waging war on us with fossil fuels as his weapon, and we're fighting back with the Constitution.
Steve, I can't take these people, man. Because now we've got gaslighting, we've got language, and perhaps I'll give a little grace here. She probably is convinced that she's right.
She
But-
was probably educated in the San Francisco school and got a 20%, so she graduated.
But that's not how the truth works, because the truth is absolute. The truth doesn't have feelings. The truth doesn't care for anything but itself, because truth does actually matter. And so she can say this is the truth, that he's weaponizing fossil fuels, that fossil fuels are his weapon against us and are destroying my life. But I would like to see how they're connecting this to the Fifth Amendment. I don't know how you make that leap. But again, you got lawyers willing to file the suit, and because we have to fight literally Hitler in the form
Lawyers.
of Donald
We are syncing up here, my friend. Lawyers willing to file this. Now, I threw up that first page of the lawsuit. It showed the litigants involved, and one jumped off the screen to me. It was who's coming from Washington, D.C., because they're filing this in Washington, D.C., even though they have people from Montana and Florida and all across the country. 22 young people, and there was a law firm that was represented there called Public Justice. So I dug into Public Justice to find out a little bit about them, because they are at the helm here. They've taken up the mantle. They're going to push back on the orange man bad. And Public Justice was founded in January 1982, is originally called Trial Lawyers for Public Justice. It's a nonprofit legal advocacy organization that takes on purveyors of corporate corruption, sexual abusers and harassers, and polluters who ravage the environment. So they're communists who go after companies that they don't like because they don't post BLM black squares. They're all about hashtag Me Too. And the sun god is their, in fact, god. They worship Gaia. So I dug it a little bit more and found out like their Form 990 tax form, the most recent one I was able to acquire was 2023, so a year old on the tax documents. They're just sitting on the coffers of bringing in about $9.4 million of donations. So just
Wow.
they're fighting they're fighting against the big guys out there, Garrett. They're just a little organization. They also have a parent group called Public Justice Foundation. And it's a charitable organization affiliated with Public Justice, legal advocacy firm that specializes in lawsuits against government and large business. The Public Justice Foundation argues that businesses are necessarily corrupt and that increased government intervention into the marketplace would supposedly limit this corruption and protect citizens. So, government me harder, daddy.
Indeed. Government me harder, daddy. $9 million? Who are one? I want to know who are the people donating to this place, because you got to have pretty substantial income and I'm sure they've got more than one donor, unless it's George Soros, then maybe they don't. But their whole goal is to sue government, which I'm actually not opposed to. I don't like how litigious our society has become, but the government pretty much by and large is the main problem. So we do need people who are willing to battle the government. So I'm good with it on that front. But then when you have a lawsuit like this that is frivolous on its face, but they've got the money, they got the coffers filled, they got attorneys willing to do the work, and then they'll scour the nation for 22 young people who will say, "Yeah, I'll sign on to that," and then off you go, just stacking up lawsuits, which will only cost you more in the long run because your tax dollars are who pay the DOJ or whatever entity's attorneys to fight these type of things.
And so many of those attorneys will then be brought into government at some point whenever there's a more of a communist person who's at the helm in the executive branch. This is where they sort of cut their teeth. They get recognized. They are able to run in the same social circles as the government attorneys or maybe even the judges. That's why when you have a judge who's appointed and they say they worked in a nonpartisan law group that was out there fighting against big business. I mean, this is a person that you want to be a judge. It's these sorts of groups here. And I believe I looked through it. It was like 46 to 50% of the $9 million went towards salaries. So it's just a payoff for attorneys that want to bring communist lawsuits against government, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about Doge, and we talked about how that's 0.1% of the budget that Mike Johnson can't wait. I mean, we're really going to fix this thing. We're going to get this back on the straight and narrow. Elon Musk no longer going to be the sugar daddy, the benefactor of the Republican Party, and rightfully so. He's sacrificed mightily, but if there's any outgrowth of this that I am enjoying in this Kakistocracy age, and it's just exposure of how people are politically oriented, and it's all about virtue signaling, and they don't give a damn about the environment. I don't even care about these 22 kids that brought a lawsuit. And I know that because if you were to ask these 22 kids what their positions are on electric vehicles, particularly Tesla, they probably would advocate what we're seeing here in the Politico. Elon Musk sours the Democrats on electric vehicles, according to a poll. A new national poll conducted by the Electric Vehicle Intelligence Report just before Senate Republicans voted last week to revoke California's vehicle emissions rules shows how much Elon Musk and Tesla have complicated the EV landscape for Democrat voters. More than half of Democrats surveyed, 56%, say they oppose allowing car makers to sell their extra credits to other car makers that don't hit their sales targets, while only 20% said they support the concept. So, background on this concept. This is this carbon credit garbage concept where effectively you have a car manufacturing company or any company for that matter. This is what Al Gore made like $1 billion on. You're allowed to pollute a certain amount. You get a certain amount of carbon credits. Just go with me. This is a complete construct. It's invented out of whole cloth. You get allowed to have a certain amount of carbon credits. Let's say, Garrett, that you are manufacturing automobiles, and I have a shoe repair shop. Now, I'm going to have carbon credits and you're going to have carbon credits. My carbon footprint's probably going to be way smaller than yours. But good for you, you can buy my carbon offsets so that you can continue to operate. So effectively, we're redistributing your wealth to me, the shoe repair shop.
Well,
It's
thank
almost
you.
like from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. This is what the carbon credit system is. And the Senate Republicans were like, no, 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 no. Like, that's a little bit too communist for us. So we're going to put a stop on that one. Now, what doesn't make sense, because the Democrats really like the sun monster worship. So shouldn't they be all in for electric vehicles? Except Elon Musk is involved, and Elon Musk is involved in a different way. And back to the Politico, because what they hate worse than the carbon, which allows them to kill people, is when smart people take advantage of the system that they invented in order to make communism a thing. And Elon Musk did that. Market experts say that the rules undoubtedly turned Tesla into an EV, electric vehicle behemoth. That's because the state mandates require automakers who don't meet their sales requirements to buy credits from those that sell more. And so Elon Musk basically got to sell all of his credits because he was way more efficient and take money from the other electric vehicle companies.
Oh, I love it.
So he's bad now, though, as are all electric
Yeah.
vehicles. Maybe
Yes.
we can come together and agree that when you plug your car into the 3 holes in the wall, it's not pixie dust that's charging it up. That's coming from a coal-fired plant. So
Right.
effectively, your EV is really a coal car.
Yes.
But
Which
the Democrats are really upset, which is why we get this one.
Jeez, that Cybertruck got wrecked. It would have been better if they would have spray painted that with orange paint, though.
Mm.
If you
Do they realize
see,
that the Cybertrucks have cameras all around them when they're spray painting?
you would think they would have caught on to that by now because there's been enough of these vandalism videos. But this just goes to show you that the communist doesn't actually care about the things they claim they care about. They just care about their feelings, and that's what this comes down to, anyways. Their sun god a couple years ago was one of the biggest gods in their cult because the earth, we've got to save the earth. Well, we just had this story with the 22 young people trying to make a Fifth Amendment claim about that, which is just false. And then, like you said, they don't connect the dots enough to say, there's actually a coal miner in West Virginia who's digging up all this coal to give us electricity. But I'm going to feel good about myself until Elon showed that he's actually a Nazi, literally actually a Nazi, that now I suddenly don't like electric vehicles because of him. They don't actually care about the things they claim to care about.
I don't think that I would agree with Elon Musk on everything or a lot of things. But if we're talking about a kakistocracy, I think that guy's demonstrated an ability and a competence from an executive standpoint where he's able to manipulate the electric vehicle market, put rockets and satellites into space, and then roll into the federal government and be like, yeah, I'll cut out $2 trillion. Politics, ideology aside, and those are important. If he was in some sort of executive capacity, you could not argue that there's a kakistocracy. And that's why they would say it's an oligarchy because he's rich. Well, he's rich because he's uber competent and
Yeah.
qualified.
He wasn't always rich. I mean, there's pictures of him working on techie type stuff in what looks to be a relatively cheap apartment when he was first getting started. So blame the guy for working hard and being smart. And I know he can't be the president because he wasn't born here, but think of just the scenario where Elon Musk becomes president. And if you think the lawfare against Donald Trump is bad, give me a break. Because Elon would actually come in to really slash the budget, to really slash government. They brought him in to do that. And I know, as we talked about the other day, his special appointment or whatever it was, like the clock has run out, but it's becoming very evident based on things he's recently said or tweeted that he has soured on even the idea of fixing government because he realized that you can't. The behemoth, the Kakistocracy will persist.
The Kakistocracy has all these constructs with electric vehicles and carbon credits. They're making Al Gore $1 billion, and they're really, really excited to make you eat the bugs. But not enough people are eating the bugs, particularly in Europe, which is why we have this news story that's rolling in here from Politico. Insect-based pet food, the latest byproduct of EU bureaucracy. Insect-based pet food is marketed as hypoallergenic and more sustainable. It remains a niche product, though. It's 99.5% of pet food is not insect-based. So they're just a little bit of a small market for it. However, green NGOs, which represent the types of people who are the 22-year-old kids who sued because their life is at stake, right? Green NGOs, non-governmental organizations, like Eurogroup for Animals and Compassion in World Farming, they've questioned the true environmental benefits of making the dogs eat bugs. Quote, farming insects has a higher sustainability impact than most traditional pet food ingredients. Most insects are not sourced from Europe. If you want to rear them here, you can, but you must keep them at high temperature and humidity, which comes with financial and energy costs. If we're replacing pet food made from animal byproducts like slaughtered waste, which is already a good use of waste, then it's really not sustainable. So it's a complete virtue signal where they're bringing in bugs and raising them, and that's creating more carbon than if they had just taken the animal products that they already had, because people are still eating the animals and not the bugs, and gave the guts to their pets.
That's the real problem, though, Steve, is you got to stop eating meat, okay? That then we will be able to increase our efficiency in our bug farms. But dude, oh man, the bug stuff. Just think of that. If you're increasing energy use and all this because of your bug farm to try to tap into the pet food market in Europe to the tune of 0.5% to where the energy use is now becoming a problem, you really think that this is a good idea to try to feed the entire world with bugs? It falls apart.
Garrett, at any point in the last almost 1,000 days, have you ever had a sentence uttered out of your mouth which involved a bug farm and pet food and getting into the European food market? Or do you just want to go back to putting bad guys in jail?
I would prefer the latter. I think I was decent enough at that job, but hey, somebody's got to shed light on this nonsense, I guess, for the time being.
We need you back, Garrett. We need you back to investigate things like the auto pen in the Kakistocracy.
I love it.
So this
Unleash
is
me.
from Reuters. Trump's DOJ is examining pardons issued by Joe Biden. Ed Martin, who told our friend Brianna Morello 2 weeks ago, very much like Don Jr. style, yeah, it's been confirmed. We're going to do right by Garrett Boyle. And then promptly went dark. Ted Martin, the Justice Department's pardon attorney, wrote in an email seen by Reuters that the investigation involves whether Joe Biden, guess what, by the way, whether he was competent and whether others were taking advantage of him through use of the auto pen. The email stated that Ed Martin's investigation is focused on preemptive pardons that Joe Biden, I guess in quotations, issued to several members of his family, and clemency that spared 37 death row inmates. Now, because it's Reuters and they're a communist rag, they had to throw in at the end, the very end, no evidence has emerged to suggest that Biden did not intend to issue the pardons. Let me say that again. That's a lot of negatives in this sentence. No evidence has emerged to suggest that Biden did not intend to issue the pardons. You have to affirmatively prove it. In addition, DOJ memo from 2005 during the Bush administration, when he was the worst on earth, found that it was legitimate for a subordinate to use an auto pen for the president's signature. So I guess George W. Bush is good again because he said that subordinates could take advantage of the auto pen, and you haven't effectively proven that that incompetent, doddering old fool didn't really want to pardon all the people like Anthony Fauci.
You could just bring Joe Biden in for an interview, and he'll probably tell you, instead of wanting to pardon these people, that he meant to take them out behind the shed and beat them up. But maybe not. Maybe he would be lucid enough and say, "Oh yeah, I did mean to pardon them." Also, George W. Bush, well, of course he's good again because he's anti-Trump and has been for however long, because he has been, well, his entire family has been part of the Kakistocracy for many, many, many a moon.
Mhm. Pivoting also within the DOJ, and there were some revelations that came from the suspendables originally. That's the Catholic memo. We would need to bring this up from the Washington Times because more information has now emerged. FBI files show targeting of Catholic groups was bigger than Biden era officials acknowledged. Now, if you're familiar with Kyle Seraphin or any of the suspendables have been talking about this for multiple years, you would know that this has always been the case. This is not a mystery, but I'm glad that maybe it's reached the Kakistocracy's ears a little bit, like the Chuck Grassleys of the world, who are very, very excited to report about it when he posts it on X, which is the last time we'll ever hear about it, most likely. According to new documents, the Richmond memo, which came in January 2023, also known as the Richmond Domain Perspective, was distributed in February to over 1,000 FBI employees. I don't think that 1,000 employees work in FBI Richmond. I thought it was limited to just Richmond, per Christopher Wray, who did not get a preemptive pardon from Joe Biden. So maybe we can see some charges there. After the nationwide distribution within the FBI, it appeared that none of the FBI recipients responded to the Richmond office with concerns. It was just like normal. Like, yeah, of course, anybody who goes to Latin Mass is obviously an anti-government extremist. The Richmond office only received positive feedback. In an email, the FBI's field office in Buffalo told FBI officials that there were two groups included in the Richmond Domain Perspective. So they fit with the categorization and the identification of radical traditional Catholic. And they identified by the Southern Poverty Law Center as hate groups, and they were in their area. So now they're going to start employing these recommendations. They're going to try to infiltrate these parishes and recruit people to inform on their fellow parishioners. The documents also show that Richmond field office worked with Louisville to gather information about Catholic traditionalist groups. FBI analysts in Richmond consulted with Portland and Milwaukee as they prepared the memo. The FBI found at least 13 additional documents and 5 attachments that use the terminology radical traditionalist Catholic, cited by the Southern Poverty Law Center. But I thought Christopher Wray testified that he found it abhorrent. He was aghast. I believe that's a direct quote. At the realization that this intelligence product existed, he immediately had it withdrawn. There was nothing else to support it, which is definitely why Stanley Meter can continue to be the special agent in charge of the Richmond field office. No consequences. He can stand behind the director and the deputy director at all of their press statements, right?
That's the piece of this to me that stands out the most. Early on in that piece, it said new documents have emerged. No, they're not new. They are not new documents. They are from circa 2023 at a maximum, because that's when this all came out. So people were working on this type of memo prior to that, maybe even as far back as sometime in 2022, because it was January when this came out. Stanley Meter, the SAC of Richmond, who, like you said, is still there, was brought in for a deposition. And in the deposition, he said, I appreciated their perspective. So he appreciated the perspective that the FBI should target radical traditional Catholics. Okay. But sure, he can still be an SES level official in the FBI. But people who expose this type of wickedness, this type of evil, and that's what this is. And from an American perspective, it's not because it's Catholics. This would be abhorrent if it was Hindus, like the FBI director who currently sits on the 7th floor. He's a Hindu. It would be abhorrent if it was Lutherans or Muslims or you name it, any religious entity. If they were being targeted this way by the FBI, it is abhorrent. in a nation that is allegedly free, where you allegedly have a First Amendment. But oh no, we'll just wait a couple years and we'll find a few more documents and point back to how bad the FBI was. But hey, even though 99.9% of those people still work there, it's all good, Steve. We've got a new era of FBI ahead of us. And this proves it because look, we went and found these old documents. Okay, how many people who were involved from all these field offices that you listed off? Because it wasn't just Richmond. It was right here in my back door, the Milwaukee, Portland, Louisville. Uh, So all the people involved, why aren't heads rolling? Are they being suspended? Have their clearances been suspended yet? Are they being fired? Are they being arrested? Are there federal civil rights cases, 18 USC 241 or 18 USC 242 being opened on them? No. But hey, here's a couple documents.
Mhm. The individual that brought this out to our constituency, our suspendables group, they were removed from office. And have they been reinstated? And I want to bring and connect this to this adjacent piece that I have about the FBI and this kakistocracy concerns that we're bringing up today. And that is they were able to find these extra documents, which Christopher Wray perjured himself about in front of the Congress. So I'll anxiously await for Ed Martin to bring charges against him on that one. But we're presupposing that the guys now at the helm are getting access to everything, which I think is kind of a fool's errand. They're getting access to some things that they're being allowed access to, but you should never assume that that means that they have a skeleton key and they themselves are culling through every serial, every document that is housed within FBI software because the FBI director and the deputy director don't have the bandwidth for that. They're being shown this by people who came up to them on day one and said, I'm so glad you're here. I want to show you the secret room that has the secret boxes. And I promise, pinky promise, even though I've been in this position for years on end and seen the problems, I raised concerns, but at the end of the day, I just followed orders, which is what the American people should demand in me as an FBI personnel. But I pinky promise that I'm showing you all of the problems, not just the select few that might get your attention and get you onto the media to get you distracted while we're continuing operating as status quo, situation normal, all effed up snafu. The adjoining piece comes from college professor, mine, at Our Ladies University, University of Notre Dame. Margot Cleveland reports in the Federalist, DOJ officials didn't know that a database allowed the FBI to bury the existence of the Russiagate documents. This database is called Sentinel. That's the reporting system that's the FBI uses to basically write reports. Police reports all go in there. Prohibited access. It's a coding in the FBI Sentinel case management system that precludes investigators from detecting the existence of potentially relevant serials. In other words, according to just released FBI report, when search terms that exist in the prohibited access status cases are searched in Sentinel, the particular search will receive a false negative Sentinel search response. All right, it's a little complicated, a little nerdy, but basically all the report systems of reports are housed within Sentinel in the FBI. That you pull that up on your desktop, I got to type out this report, boom, goes into my case file in Sentinel. Now you can search in Sentinel for key terms for individuals, but if a case has this prohibited access on it, not restricted access is commonly known. Hey, you got to have a need to know, you got to be read into this file, you have to be specific to this case in order to find out what's in the case, even if, let's say, I wanted to look up Garrett O'Boyle. Now, if it's unclassified, I might be able to look all over Sentinel for Garrett O'Boyle. If it's in a restricted file that I don't have a need to know, it'll pop up restricted. You can't see what's in there, but you would know that Garrett O'Boyle is in that case file. But if there's prohibited access and I type in Garrett O'Boyle, it wouldn't show up anything, which means that the FBI has the ability to take information, names, certain terms, put them in prohibited access, and the FBI director apparently doesn't have the skeleton key to look at it. Nor does the special counsel or the inspector general, who apparently did a very thorough investigation of Crossfire Hurricane, aka Russiagate. So this is going to necessitate digging up and re-looking at all of these things all over again, which are outside the statute of limitations, and they can't actually take any action other than maybe being transparent, calling people out. If they still work for the FBI, giving them a couple days of suspension or whatever the punishment's going to be. And back to my original point, it's almost like they're going to get distracted with something salacious that they really can't take any action on, and at the same time be focused on that and assume that that is all that's gone on for all this time.
Right. We've fixed it
Kakistocracy.
now. You now know that they have this ability to prohibit access to things, and which doesn't even allow you to find the information. So I want to know how prevalent is this issue? Who are the people who do have the ability to prohibit access? How long have they been doing it? What cases have they done it on? Are we ever going to find this out? I'm not going to hold my breath here, because you learn this information. Now it's in the public. And what do you think, Steve? By next week, maybe next week, it'll probably fade into the ether and hardly be spoken of again. But hey, it's look, we're showing you things about the FBI. We've called for it for a long time, that the FBI at a minimum needs gross a gross overhaul of reform. And mostly, I think just about all suspendables, public and non-public, have arrived at the conclusion that it cannot continue to exist. Oddly enough, Steve, the guys who are the director and the deputy director used to say similar type of things, but not anymore, because now it's, look, we're the FBI, we need it. I fully support this FBI. We're behind it. Look at our recruiting numbers. Look at how many new analysts we're going to hire. Look at me running with the new agents class that's going to graduate from Quantico, and it's fixed. So don't worry. It's the Kakistocracy will persist.
Well, look, the truth that we're trying to bring and that is exposing these sorts of things and highlighting how this is probably an irredeemable agency that needs to be shattered into 1,000 pieces and scattered to the wind. Like that truth, our reverence for that truth is a distraction and stopping us from getting things done. One more, guys, here on the Kakistocracy. And this is reporting from the Blaze from Joe Hanneman, Steve Baker, both suspendables in their own right. And this concerns not the FBI, but the U.S. Capitol Police and promoting the worst people, because that's what happens within a Kakistocracy. Controversial assistant chief embroiled in a 2010 fraud scandal. He's named the acting Capitol Police chief, referring to Mr. Sean Gallagher. Now, Sean Gallagher has drawn fire throughout his nearly 25 years with Capitol Police, which that's the mall cops. I mean, people who stick around there for 2.5 decades, you kind of have to question their general interest in law enforcement. They're mostly just glorified security guards / tour guides. He has a felony level time card fraud case and involved him in forging the signature of Capitol Police Inspector in order to file bogus overtime claims. He was one of the subjects in a scathing January 6th whistleblower letter that basically said that Sean Gallagher and others sat on their hands and didn't take any action while all their officers were involved with the riot going on outside. Gallagher forged his supervisor's signature on overtime pay submissions using a different colored pen for the forged signature from the one that he used for his own. There was an investigation that recommended that he be demoted, not fired, not
Dude,
prosecuted.
yeah.
He be demoted, but instead they settled on giving him a 10-day unpaid suspension, so
Dude,
2
this
weeks on the
is
bricks.
so ridiculous. Just right here, it's like, okay, you can forge. This is the literal definition of fraud, waste, and abuse. Literally, Steve. Literally. So he can forge signatures so you, the taxpayer, can pay him more. But hey, if you make matters known to Congress about wrongdoing that is happening inside the federal government, well, you end up doing a podcast 1,000 days later.
All we know is that the overtime was in excess of $10,000, right? But didn't, I guess, meet the threshold for a prosecution or even a firing. He got 2 weeks on the bricks.
Yeah.
Now, this move, he most likely will not become the full-time police chief. But in a Kakistocracy, hope springs eternal for the worst people. He might get it, but let's presume he doesn't. What this does give him, though, is that interim label that he could put on his resume and then go become a police chief somewhere else. And just for note here in the Kakistocracy, the final budget point that I have here, U.S. Capitol Police budget request this year, when we can't pass the Doge cuts, $1 billion for the U.S. Capitol Police glorified security guards / tour guides. What do you want to bet that they get all of that in a
Oh yeah.
Kakistocracy?
Yep. They're going to get it. And the Kakistocracy will persist.
I want to feel better, Garrett. I do have a funny palate cleanse, but can you please just give me a hope that an assurance that the truth matters today?
The truth indeed does matter, Steve. This will be the final one from Exodus 20, verse 16. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And as we've been hammering, the root of that is the truth, because bearing false witness is a lie. And as you may recall, we also are dabbling back into 1 John chapter 2 a little bit as well. And I'll read a little bit of that too. They went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would have continued with us. But they went out, that it might become plain that they all are not of us. But you have been anointed by the Holy One, and you all have knowledge. I write to you not because you do not know the truth, but because you know it, and because no lie is of the truth. Who is the liar but he who denies that Jesus is the Christ? This is the Antichrist, he who denies the Father and the Son. No one who denies the Son has the Father. Whoever confesses the Son has the Father also. Let what you heard from the beginning abide in you. If what you heard from the beginning abides in you, then you too will abide in the Son and in the Father. And this is the promise that he made to us, eternal life.
You know the one thing that God absolutely hates? He hates self-righteousness. He hates self-righteousness, whether you're saved or unsaved, a Christian or a non-Christian. If you don't believe in Jesus Christ this morning, your self-righteousness will get you nowhere. I caution you to live a life with such audacity that you think that one day you'll stand before Almighty God and show him your self-righteous works. He will say, "Depart from me, I never knew you." But just as much as God hates the self-righteousness of a non-Christian, he hates the self-righteousness of a Christian. Because it's the self-righteousness of the Christian that is the most offensive to God. Lying and bearing false witness about who we truly are, acting as if we're someone that we're not, without failing to embrace and be truthful that we are by nature unworthy and unlovable, yet by the grace of Almighty God, that if it was not for the grace of God, we would have no hope, that we are a sinner saved by grace, that there's nothing special, there's nothing worthy, there's nothing righteous about us, that the only righteousness we have is a gift of grace through faith alone in the finished work of Jesus Christ. I love the story of Scottish preacher Robert Murray McShane, who after a Sunday evening service was congratulated by a parishioner for his saintliness and his piety, to which he replied sharply, "Ma'am, if you could see into my heart, you would spit in my face." That sounds extreme, and that sounds harsh. But there is nothing more healthy than an individual that is self-aware and honest and truthful about who they are in light of the grace of God. Acts chapter 1 verse 8 says clearly that through the power of the gospel and the power of the Holy Spirit, you will be my witnesses to the very ends of the earth. In a world full of deceit and lies, there has never been a more important time that we proclaim the truth and that we are witnesses to the work of Christ in our life and witnesses to the work of Christ in our world. It is revolutionary to tell the truth and to not suppress it, but to allow the whole world to know the truth of the gospel and the truth that Christ alone is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Why?
I don't think I really have anything else to add to that, Steve, because what else is there other than the ultimate truth of Christ?
Man, we're being symbiotic today because my palate cleanse is about self-awareness, being able to have tough conversations and tell the truth. And also I want to link it into electric vehicles, which I bang on and I'm not a fan of. But I guess when they're willing to tell you the truth, it is an objectively good thing, the subject of today's palate cleanse.
Tesla, take me somewhere I've never been before. Oh shit, where's it going?
This ought to be interesting.
Let's see where it takes us. Turning right. Let's see.
Well, that's good.
Wonder where it's going to take us. Like, how? It has to be just places we've never been in. Like, I wonder where it's
Headed toward Mooresville.
Yeah. I've been to Mooresville. Where it's going? 36.
And that narrows it down. There's so many places off this exit. Been to most of them though. Just about any eating restaurant around here.
It says we're pulling in.
Oh. I guess you've never been there before.
It took him to the gym.
Planet Fitness. Dude, that is funny. Tesla, AI has a sense of humor, apparently.
Elon Musk probably plugged it in there, programmed it himself. All right. That's going to do it for us today on the American Radicals podcast. Back with you Saturday, 10:30 Eastern time on Rumble. If you haven't already, give us a thumbs up, give us a follow. Check us out on @XAmericaNews. Check us out on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, all the places. Hopefully Instagram soon, guys. I promise I'm trying, but I am inside this veneer. I'm a 95-year-old man who's probably like Chuck Grassley poking away one key at a time. Until Saturday, guys, have a great day.
You've been listening to the voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/amradpod.